Did you know that Ethiopia embraced Christianity even before the Roman Empire? That's right. While the Roman Empire was still persecuting Christians, Ethiopia had already adopted the gospel, laying the foundation for its culture and society. Ethiopia's Christian heritage is ancient, with its story deeply intertwined with the Bible, prophetic significance, and a divine legacy that continues to shape the nation's identity today. But Ethiopia's story doesn't end with its religious transformation. It's also the only African country to have successfully resisted European colonization. Ethiopia's faith, rich history, and resilience are a testament to its unique role in history, particularly its place in biblical prophecy. Ethiopia stands out as one of the earliest nations to adopt Christianity as a state religion. This remarkable transformation occurred in the 4th century AD under King Ezana of the Aksumite Empire. At that time, Rome was still grappling with internal religious conflicts, and the conversion of Emperor Constantine to Christianity hadn't yet formalized the religion's dominance in Europe. Meanwhile, Ethiopia had already laid down its Christian roots. According to historical records, Ethiopia's conversion to Christianity began when 2 Syrian brothers, Frumentius and Edesius, were shipwrecked on the Ethiopian coast. After being captured, they were taken to the royal court, where Frumentius became a trusted advisor to the young King Ezana. Frumentius introduced Christianity to the king, and eventually, Ezana was baptized, marking a monumental shift for the Aksumite kingdom. Frumentius would later be consecrated as the first bishop of Ethiopia by Saint Athanasius of Alexandria, formalizing Ethiopia's Christian status. This transition was more than a religious change. It was a cultural revolution that intertwined the Bible's teachings with Ethiopian customs. The significance of Ethiopia's early Christian history is profound. Unlike Rome, which experienced a gradual Christianization over several centuries, Ethiopia's conversion was swift and unequivocal. This made Ethiopia one of the first Christian nations in the world, long before Christianity became widely established across Europe. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which traces its roots back to this era, remains one of the oldest Christian denominations in existence. Ethiopia's Christian heritage is not the only thing that sets it apart. The country has a rich biblical history that goes back to the Old Testament. Ethiopia, referred to as Cush in the Bible, is mentioned multiple times in connection to ancient civilizations and key events. One of the earliest mentions of Ethiopia can be found in Genesis 2:13, where it is named as one of the lands watered by the rivers flowing from the Garden of Eden. This early mention places Ethiopia at the heart of biblical geography. The Bible also links Ethiopia to the descendants of Noah. After the flood, Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, repopulated the earth. Ethiopia, or Cush, is identified as a descendant of Ham, making it one of the oldest nations in biblical history. This genealogical connection establishes Ethiopia as a prominent player in the ancient world. One of the most well-known biblical stories involving Ethiopia is the account of the Queen of Sheba. In 1 Kings 10, the Queen of Sheba travels to Jerusalem to test King Solomon's wisdom. She brings a lavish gift of gold, spices, and precious stones, and is left in awe of Solomon's wisdom and the splendor of his court. Ethiopian tradition, as recorded in the Kebra Nagast, the Glory of Kings, adds a fascinating detail to this story. The Queen of Sheba and King Solomon had a son named Menelik, who would become the first emperor of Ethiopia's Solomonic dynasty. According to this tradition, Menelik is said to have brought the Ark of the Covenant from Jerusalem to Ethiopia, where it remains hidden in the town of Aksum to this day, guarded by Ethiopian Orthodox monks. This claim positions Ethiopia as one of the only nations outside Israel to claim such a direct connection to the biblical covenant. The Solomonic dynasty would go on to rule Ethiopia for over 3,000 years, ending with Emperor Haile Selassie in 1974, further solidifying the nation's divine legacy. Ethiopia's faith was not only a spiritual anchor but also a source of strength during times of invasion. While much of Africa was carved up by European powers during the scramble for Africa, Ethiopia successfully resisted colonization, a feat that was largely attributed to the nation's deep Christian faith and belief in divine protection. The most famous of these events was the Battle of Adwa in 1896, when Ethiopian forces, under the leadership of Emperor Menelik II, decisively defeated Italian invaders. This victory was significant not only for Ethiopia, but for all of Africa, as it became a symbol of African resistance and independence. The Italians, who had hoped to add Ethiopia to their colonial empire, were forced to retreat, and Ethiopia remained the only African nation to retain its sovereignty during the height of European imperialism. In the 20th century, Ethiopia faced another challenge when Italy, under the fascist regime of Benito Mussolini, launched a brutal invasion in 1935. This time, the Italians managed to occupy the country for a brief period. However, with the support of the Allies during World War II, Ethiopia reclaimed its independence in 1941. Throughout these tumultuous periods, Ethiopia's Christian identity played a crucial role in uniting the people against foreign invaders. While Ethiopia's spiritual heritage is undeniable, the nation has faced significant challenges in terms of economic development. Despite its rich history and early Christian roots, Ethiopia has remained one of the poorest countries in the world. Some argue that Ethiopia's unique traditions, deeply tied to its Christian identity, fostered a culture with weak work habits, making it difficult for the nation to modernize in the same way as other countries. However, Ethiopia's spiritual wealth has always been seen as far more valuable than its material poverty. Ethiopia's rich religious traditions continue to shape the country's culture today. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church remains a central institution, and Christian festivals such as Timkat Epiphany and Meskel, the Finding of the True Cross, are celebrated with great reverence and enthusiasm. These religious practices, which date back centuries, have helped Ethiopia maintain a strong sense of identity and continuity in a rapidly changing world. Ethiopia's profound Christian faith, its resistance to colonization, and its biblical heritage have all contributed to its significant place in biblical prophecy. Ethiopia is often seen as a nation with a divine destiny, one that fulfills God's promises to his people. In the book of Psalms, Psalm 831, there is a prophetic reference that reads, "Princes shall come out of Egypt, Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her hands unto God." This verse has been interpreted by many as a sign of Ethiopia's prominent role in spreading Christianity and its enduring faithfulness to God. In the New Testament, the story of the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8:26-39 is another significant moment. The eunuch, an important official in the court of the Queen of Ethiopia, is baptized by the Apostle Philip, marking the spread of Christianity to Africa and highlighting Ethiopia's role in the early Christian church. Ethiopia holds a unique and revered place in African history, as the only African country to successfully resist European colonization during the scramble for Africa. This monumental moment in history occurred in 1896 at the Battle of Adwa, where Ethiopian forces under Emperor Menelik II decisively defeated the Italian army. This victory solidified Ethiopia's independence and established the nation as a symbol of African resilience and pride. But Ethiopia's defiance against colonialism was not just due to military might, it was also rooted in the deep spiritual conviction of the Ethiopian people, who believed they were under divine protection due to their strong Christian faith. In 1896, as European powers scrambled to divide Africa among themselves, Ethiopia stood apart as a nation that refused to be colonized. Italy, which had laid claim to parts of Eritrea and sought to extend its control over the Ethiopian Empire, was met with fierce resistance. The Italians underestimated Ethiopia's determination and the unity of its people. Under the leadership of Emperor Menelik II, Ethiopia organized a large army of soldiers from various regions of the country, united by the cause of defending their sovereignty. The Italians had hoped for a swift victory, but they were vastly outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Ethiopian forces, consisting of peasants, nobles, and warriors from across the empire, were familiar with the rugged terrain and fought with unmatched determination. On March 1, 1896, Ethiopia achieved a decisive victory, with thousands of Italian soldiers killed, wounded, or taken prisoner. The defeat sent shockwaves through Europe, challenging the notion of European superiority and colonial entitlement in Africa. Ethiopia's victory at Adwa was not only a testament to its military prowess, but also to its faith. For centuries, Ethiopia had maintained a strong Christian identity, dating back to the 4th century when King Ezana of Aksum converted to Christianity, making Ethiopia one of the first Christian nations in the world. Many Ethiopians believed that their Christian faith gave them divine favor, and this belief in God's protection played a critical role in their resolve during the battle. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church was deeply ingrained in the country's culture, and it offered both spiritual support and a sense of unity among the diverse Ethiopian forces. The victory at Adwa is remembered not just as a military triumph, but as a spiritual one, with the Ethiopians seeing themselves as protectors of a Christian heritage in the face of European powers that sought to impose foreign rule. This belief in divine providence has become an enduring part of Ethiopia's national identity and helped cement the Battle of Adwa as a symbol of resistance, not just for Ethiopians, but for Africans across the continent. The story of Ethiopia's resistance did not end with the Battle of Adwa. 4 decades later, in the 1930s, Ethiopia faced a renewed threat from Italy under the fascist regime of Benito Mussolini. Determined to avenge the humiliation of Adwa, Mussolini ordered the invasion of Ethiopia in 1935, seeking to expand Italy's colonial empire in East Africa. Despite the use of modern weaponry and chemical warfare by the Italians, Ethiopia's emperor, Haile Selassie, led a courageous but ultimately unsuccessful defense. By 1936, the Italian forces had occupied the capital, Addis Ababa, and declared Ethiopia part of Italian East Africa. However, Haile Selassie's defiance did not end with this defeat. He went into exile and famously appealed to the League of Nations, delivering a passionate speech in Geneva in 1936, in which he called for international support against fascist aggression. His words, though largely ignored at the time, became a rallying cry for justice and resistance. During World War II, with the help of the Allies, Ethiopia regained its independence in 1941, marking the end of Italy's brief colonial occupation. Haile Selassie's return to power symbolized Ethiopia's resilience and further strengthened the country's legacy as a beacon of African independence. Ethiopia's successful resistance to colonization has made it a symbol of African independence and resilience. Unlike many other African nations that fell under European control during the colonial era, Ethiopia maintained its sovereignty and preserved its ancient traditions. The Battle of Adwa, in particular, became a source of inspiration for other African nations struggling for independence in the 20th century. The victory is celebrated not only in Ethiopia but across the African diaspora as a triumph of black self-determination and resistance to imperialism. Even after the eventual Italian occupation in the 1930s, Ethiopia's continued fight for freedom, led by Haile Selassie, reinforced its role as a leader in the African independence movement. Ethiopia's resistance to foreign domination and its ability to preserve its cultural and religious identity have made it a symbol of hope for many African nations striving for autonomy. Ethiopia's strategic importance extends beyond its resistance to colonization. It plays a vital role in the geopolitics of the Nile River, one of the most significant water sources in the region. The Blue Nile, one of the 2 major tributaries of the Nile, originates in the Ethiopian highlands. This gives Ethiopia considerable influence over the flow of the river, which is crucial for both Sudan and Egypt, 2 countries that rely heavily on the Nile's waters for agriculture and drinking water. In recent years, Ethiopia's construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam GERD has sparked tensions with Egypt, which fears that the dam will reduce the flow of water downstream. The dam, however, is seen by Ethiopia as a necessary project for generating hydroelectric power and promoting economic development. This modern-day conflict over the Nile's waters mirrors the biblical significance of the river and underscores Ethiopia's continued importance in the region. Ethiopia's role in biblical history further enriches its cultural and spiritual identity. The Bible frequently references Ethiopia, known as Cush in the Old Testament, as a land of great significance. One of the most famous New Testament stories involving Ethiopia is the conversion of the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8:26-40. In this story, Philip the evangelist encounters an Ethiopian official on his way back from Jerusalem. After hearing the gospel, the eunuch asks to be baptized, symbolizing the introduction of Christianity to Ethiopia. This story is seen as a prophetic fulfillment of Zephaniah 3:10. Where it is written that offerings will come from beyond the rivers of Cush, Ethiopia. Ethiopia's role in biblical prophecy and Christian tradition has continued to inspire both Ethiopians and Christians worldwide. Ethiopia's story is one of resilience, faith, and independence. Its ability to resist colonization, maintain its Christian heritage, and assert itself in both biblical history and modern geopolitics has made it a beacon of hope and strength in Africa. From the victory at Adwa to its geopolitical role in the Nile, Ethiopia stands as a symbol of freedom, deeply rooted in its ancient traditions and guided by its enduring faith.